I have a question. What is the restrainer? And of course, by that, I am talking about the restrainer that is mentioned in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. In 2 Thessalonians 2, it says, "For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way." Now, the reason why this is there and that is there is because this is, it can be he referring to the Holy Spirit, which would be a pronoun, or it could just be lowercase h. So he referring to something else other than the Holy Spirit. Now, this is something new to me because I used to, and still may, I'm not really sure, I haven't made up my mind. I'm actually talking about this with you guys as in a form of a conversation. This is you entering my mind and trying to figure it out, because I used to believe that the he there is speaking of the Holy Spirit, which would be represented by the church. But I'm kind of looking at it a little bit differently, and I'm revisiting this chapter because there's some new information to me, not new in general to anybody else in particular, but it's new to me. And this is all a byproduct from studying the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel. So allow me to show you or give you my thoughts on this, and then you can decide what you think at the end. So what we see here is Paul writing to the church in Thessalonica, and it says, after this restrainer is taken out of the way, it says, then the lawless one will be revealed. So this is fascinating, and we understand from down here that the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders. So this lawless one is going to be the Antichrist with all power. He's going to be revealed at a certain period of time. And so this seems to give us an order of operations, but it's really interesting when you start diving into it. So we know that there's a restrainer. We know that after the restrainer is taken away, which is when the lawless one is going to be revealed. Now, let's talk about this. Again, remember that I was always one of those people who would make you the argument that the restrainer was the church, not saying that the Holy Spirit would be removed from the tribulation period, because that's impossibility. The Holy Spirit is going to be around during that time. People are going to be born again during the tribulation. I believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, so even if the church is removed, the Holy Spirit would still be active. 144,000 is a natural byproduct of that, which you can read about in Revelation chapter 7. So what is the restrainer? What is another option of this restrainer? Well, I think that it's at least worth looking into the idea that we're about to talk about right now. I would propose to you that the idea of the restrainer could be embodied in the form of government, because what we understand about government is that government's highest function is to preserve life. And Paul gives us a little bit of a picture of human government in Romans chapter 13. But here in Romans chapter 13, he says, "For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil." And then he goes on down here and it says, "For he," the rulers that are given, referring to the government, the rulers here, "for he is God's minister to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid, for he does not bear." And then it goes on to say again, it says, "For he is God's minister." So the government that is in place is God's minister. And I think that's really interesting. Now, the reason that this ties into the book of Revelation and Daniel is because what we learn from Daniel chapter 7. In Daniel chapter 7, it says, "I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots." So this little horn is speaking of the Antichrist that is going to be future. That is yet future. But what we see about this Antichrist is that sometime in the future, there is going to be a government system, a political system that is in place, and it's going to be in place during the tribulation period. Now, what's interesting about this political system is that Daniel paints the picture of this future political system, and he uses the 10 horns. So these 10 horns are representing 10 kings. In Daniel chapter 7, it says the 10 horns are 10 kings. And so when we understand that these 10 horns represent 10 kings, I want you to think if there's 10 kings, then those kings have kingdoms. And so this is a picture of a political system that is going to be enacted during that time. And so when you talk about those three horns that we just read about, we learn that this Antichrist, when he shows up, he is going to subdue three of the kings. And so you have this picture during the 7-year tribulation of 10 kings that are in force for the first 3.5 years. But then, when the Antichrist reveals himself, he does that in a way by subduing three of the kings. And when he subdues the kings, the reason why he's subduing them is because these three kings were not falling in line with what the Antichrist wanted to do. So he had to eliminate them, and when he eliminates them, then the other 7 kings fall in line and they submit and they give their authority to the beast, which takes place at the 3.5-year mark into the tribulation. So what we're going to talk about now is what the very next verse after that verse that we just read, were the subduing of the 3 kings. After the Antichrist is revealed, which takes place at the 3.5-year mark, it says, he is going to speak pompous words against the Most High. He shall persecute the saints of the Most High. Now, it's important to understand that this Antichrist is going to persecute the saints. I don't want you to get it conflicted or to get it twisted, though, because the saints that he is going to have access to are going to be those who get saved during the tribulation. The church will have already been removed, and when that happens, there's going to be a lot of people who put their faith in Jesus because of people like you and I telling them about Jesus right now. And once the rapture occurs, their eyes are going to pop open. They're going to recognize what happens, but they're going to give their life to the Lord. And so when they get saved, it says the Antichrist shall persecute those tribulation saints of the Most High. And here's where I want you to pay attention. The Antichrist shall intend to change times and law. Now, this is fascinating to me. He's going to change times and law. It says, then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. So the saints are going to be given into his hand for a period of 3.5 years. But when it says, and shall intend to change times and law, the law word right here is what I want you to focus on. The Antichrist is going to be redoing government. He is going to be bringing a new form of government. And so what we talked about before is that the highest function of government that is set in place right now is to preserve life. But the function of the futuristic government is not going to be preserve life. And in fact, it's actually contrary to preserving life. It is going to be ending life. In Revelation chapter 20, at the end, this is what John sees. He says, I saw thrones and they sat on them, and judgment was committing to them. And then it says, and then I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for their witness. These people are the tribulation saints. The people who end up losing their head during the tribulation are the ones who got saved during the tribulation. And when they get saved during the tribulation, it is going to be a time where there is a new kingdom, a new government that is now surfacing in a very, very big way, which is what Revelation chapter 13 talks about. Because in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, John sees this beast coming out of the sea, and it's got 7 heads. And it goes on and it starts talking about what this beast is doing. It's got, it talks about like the lion, the bear, the leopard, and all of those. That picture there is basically talking about how wildly powerful this futuristic system is going to be. And so going back to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where it says that only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. So going back to the restrainer idea here, I would think it seems to make a little sense that the restrainer seems to be government, because what the government is doing right now is it is slowing down evil. There's still a lot of things that are taking place, don't get me wrong, there's still bad things taking place, but it is slowing it down. When the restrainer, the 3 kings that are yet future, are going to be plucked up, when they're going to be subdued, when they get removed because they are pushing back, they're going to be pushing back, they're going to be the final form of the restrainer, they're going to be the final picture of the restrainer. When those 3 kings arrive and they have the ability to push back against the Antichrist, they are going to eventually get plucked up. They're going to be subdued, and then that is when the full force is going to be unleashed, and that is when he's going to be revealed. So a possibility of the restrainer is the Antichrist's government, where it's going to be ending death, which is in complete contrast to Jesus's government, which will be giving life. Just a thought.